Welcome YouTubers, this is NecroarcanistXIII in association with Bandit1569, bringing you the next chapter of my dark fantasy series, the Necroarcanist Chronicles Book 1 titled Hell's Crusade. If you have not listened to my first video, which is the prologue / chapter 1, then I absolutely recommend listening to it so that you'll understand what's going to be happening in this episode. I will give 5 seconds to avoid spoiling it in the previously on section coming up in 5, 4, 3, 2, and previously on Hell's Crusade. A dictatorship empire has taken over the nation of Australia, and the main character, John, is at the local pub rallying his two closest friends, Brian and Luke, for a private discussion about recent supernatural events. After a bar fight interrupts the men as they make arrangements, John returns home to his 4 children to wait until morning. This is Chapter 2, titled Prison Break. The next day, John woke up on the couch with a hangover. The giant Vincent was over in the far corner of the lounge room, lifting weights to size of car tyres.
"You busy night?"
he asked. "I didn't even drink," said John. "At least not that much." Saberfang then staggered into the room.
"You forgot to mention that my medicine would brace from the anesthetic,"
he muttered. "It numbs the tapeworms as well as strips their protective skin," replied John, "causing them to dissolve in your stomach acid." At that point, heavy footsteps could be heard running up the driveway. The back door flew open and Brian immediately burst into the room, trying to hold on his hood. "Bob's on death row!" he shouted as John bolted up like Dracula rising out of his coffin. "The fuck?" he moaned. Brian started panting heavily. "Those gangsters. Last night, Bob got charged. Death sentencing." John immediately punched the wall beside him twice, and then Dante, Raziel, and Adele ran into the room. "Get your gear, kids," he commanded. "Got a mission." Brian was confused. "What are you doing?" he asked. "No time to explain," said John. "People in death row don't last a fucking night." The 4 teens disappeared from sight, and then Raziel, Dante, Vincent, and Adele emerged from the bedroom visible through the doorway. Raziel was holding a pair of sickle blades, shaped like fish hooks. One, held in his left hand, had a series of large spikes running along the back edge, while the one in his right hand had a single spike protruding from about halfway along the edge. Dante held a katana that was slightly curved and then turned back on itself at the tip, giving the shape of one half of an arrowhead. Vincent had no weapon at all, implying they did not need one, and Adele came back from behind him with her bracer equipped. She held her arm out in front of her face, and the intricate patterns on the bracer suddenly flicked out and spread 4 large spikes like a circular sword. "You still got that knife I gave you, Brian?" asked John. Brian pulled the large sacrificial dagger from his belt and waved it in the air. "Good, let's go bust Bob out of jail." John ran to the garage with the others in pursuit. Upon entering, only the strangely shaped motorbike was there. "How the hell are y'all gonna balance on that?" remarked Brian. John said nothing but pulled a lever on the wall. Like something out of a spy movie, the floor turned around to show a hidden compartment, swapping the motorbike with a car that was a hybrid between a limousine and a hearse. Saberfang was sleeping in the backmost seat, which was similar to the trail end of the bike, only shorter and without the tarp. The rest of the car had 8 total seats, including the driver and front passenger seat, and the gear stick was shaped like a demonic sword. The body shape could only be described as similar to the legendary Batmobile. John leapt into the driver's seat and started pushing buttons, causing the engine to roar into life. The sheer pressure of the sound waves caused Brian's blood to curdle as everybody else jumped into the sides in random seats. But then as Vincent jumped into the car, his weight caused the car to slightly tip over. John then swung his scythe into the wall to prevent the car from falling, while he jammed a Rob Zombie CD into the player. John then revved the engine and waited for the music to build up into a crescendo before he burst out of the driveway like a bat out of hell, quoting the lyrics at the start of the song in perfect pitch.
Gripping the wheel, his knuckles went white with desire. The wheels of his Mustang exploding on the highway like a slug from a 45. True death. 400 horsepower of maximum performance, piercing the night. This is black sunshine.
These words rang true as the car shot up Gormanston Hill. taking several detours through either closed or not yet running mine shafts. This road eventually ended outside of Devonport, where a large fortress stood before the group. John hit the brakes and drifted into the parking lot of a mini-mart just outside. Saberfang left the car and stealthily scoped out the shop, while John walked up to the prison walls. "There's not many guards within sight," he said. "They're probably all asleep." "You are not thinking about busting down the door," shouted Brian. "We've got this covered. Fang, come on!" John and the kids bounded off towards the gates, with Brian hesitatingly and Saberfang not so in pursuit. John motioned for Dante to run around the walls, and the boy dashed off without a word. As Brian and Saberfang came running up, nobody could tell who was panting harder, the dog or the human. Brian started to scold John in a harsh whisper. "Why are you bringing the kids along with us?" "What? They're all 18. "Yeah, 18, not fucking 21. They'll be all killed out here." At that moment Dante returned from the opposite direction in which he departed. "There's some cracks along the south side," he said, "but Vincent will cause too much noise. I vouch for the hound to step in." John turned to Dante and said, "Who knows where he's going to dig into?" before he turned to Raziel and said, "Check the south for guards." Raziel nodded and ran off with the others in slow pursuit. "Don't worry about them, Bri," said John. "I've been training these kids to defend themselves as long as I've been raising them. Why the hell do you reckon I leave them at home when I'm at work?" "Because you're an alcoholic mercenary whose wife works at a science facility on Mars. That, and they can handle most things thrown at them, with a few exceptions." John glanced at the bloodstains on Dante's coat shoulder, and then the group encountered Raziel staring at the cracks in the wall. However, they were too small to see through. Instead, Raziel had lifted up the hair covering his left eye, and Brian could see a cloth bandage, like the kind used to support a sling, covering his left eye, with what appeared to be a black stain covering the exact position of the eye. A reddish glow emitted from the central point of the mark, and then Raziel also lifted the bandage to reveal the actual eye that, save for the crimson iris, was completely blackened. The skin surrounding the eye was thick in purple lines, like cracks in a broken mirror. After a short minute, Raziel then dropped the hair and bandage back over his eye and turned to John. "There is a barracks here with 6 guards inside," he muttered. "Judging from their positions, they're playing poker." John then turned to Saberfang. "I guess you can't tunnel here, boy, but are there any audio cues?" "The oldie station on the radio, I think." "Excellent. I suggest infiltration and execution. Plumboard." John lowered down his scythe, allowing Raziel to stand on the face of the blade. John then raised it up, and Raziel leapt onto the wall, using his sickle blades to grapple and climb. Brian watched with a worried expression on his face, and within a minute a faint rhythmic tapping could be heard on the other side of the wall. Vincent nodded and wound up a powerful punch that shattered the wall like glass. Picking out iron rebar, Raziel stepped halfway out and beckoned the group inside. As Vincent stepped through, Raziel ducked behind him and started to repair the wall like a three-dimensional jigsaw to hide their entrance. The dead guards were carefully positioned in their beds to make it look like they were sleeping, apart from one who was hung from a support beam with a thick rope to hide the fact that his throat had been slit. At that point, Saberfang heard footsteps and rolled under a bunk bed, as did the others. The door opened, and in walked 2 guards. "Oh, bugger," said one. "Jacko's gone and hung himself. That's the 3rd one this week." The other guard went to inspect the broken wall. "We should get a serviceman to come and have a look at this," he muttered. "The only thing holding the wall together is a bloody rebar." "Right, mate. Let's report Jacko to the warden, then we're going to go fry the nigger that just came in." John clenched his fist tightly. Dante noticed this and made a stern face as the soldiers left. "Cool it, Big Daddy," he sneered. "The devil himself can't call pseudo-family niggers and get away with it as long as I'm around." Brian noticed a familiar fire in John's eyes. "Cool it, pretty boy," he remarked to Dante. "You're forgetting that you and your father are of Aboriginal descent, and he hates the N-word being used the wrong way." Vincent had a quizzical look on his face. "What is the right way?" he asked. "Forget it," said John. "Let's just get going." Raziel crept up to the door and peeked through the bars in the iron window. "There's a bit many guards out there," he said. "We can't tunnel through the concrete. What's the plan?" John said nothing. Brian was about to talk to him when he was stunned by a loud blast, and he saw that John had blown open the nearby wall, making the broken area a lot bigger than before. Upon hearing guards running towards the barracks, John kicked down the door with enough force to send it flying into the crowd outside. He began screaming out a vicious war cry as he tore apart every guard nearby before they had a chance to open fire. Brian was awestruck as the kids joined in on the frenzy. Saberfang nudged him in the leg and motioned for Brian to climb aboard his back. Brian did so, and Saberfang charged out across the field, striking down soldiers like cavalry on horseback. The alarm sounded, and the group were immediately surrounded. The Captain of the guard pointed an assault rifle at Brian and Saberfang. "Breathe!" he shouted. "Hands in the air!" Saberfang murmured.
Breathe? Okay.
Saberfang made a motion as if he were howling at the moon, and then a large chunk of ice suddenly enveloped the startled captain, before he shattered into shards that empowered the surrounding soldiers. "What the hell?" asked Brian worriedly. Raziel then thrust his arm out, and one soldier burst into black fire and spread across the battlefield, melting flesh off the other soldiers, while leaving the allies untouched. John somehow managed to reach the main cell blocks and urged everybody else to follow, and as Brian chased down John on foot, started shaking him. "What the fuck was that?" he shouted. "I'll be able to explain better later," said John calmly. "Now's not the time to be stopping and chatting." Brian nodded and the group ran off towards the death roadblock. However, during the long run, Adele mysteriously disappeared. Everybody stopped and searched the immediate area for her, but she was nowhere to be found. "Fuck, we're that close," muttered John. "Boys, go find her. Thanks. Right, follow me. Bob's gonna fry if we don't fucking hurry." The group split up, leaving Raziel, Dante, and Vincent to backtrack and search for Adele, while John, Brian, and Saberfang continued towards the cell blocks. John found an empty reception stand that had a listed document detailing all of the prisoners, and Luke's name was on the list. A mark on the paper noted that he had been sent to the electric chair and detailed the location of the chambers. John then noticed that the main power grid for the prison was just nearby, and immediately came up with an idea. "Saberfang, escort Brian to the power grid," he said. "Brian, use your knife to cut the main power literally. You're not going to get zapped because your knife's made of stone. It'll buy us some time before the backup hit." The three split up, and John made a mad dash for the electrocution chamber. A few minutes later, the lights went out, implying that Brian had succeeded. "Nice," he said. John started to hear yelling in the distance. "Shit, power's out. Go see what's wrong with it." Suddenly, as John turned around a corner, one of the doors had closed and propelled so to prevent any escape. Determined, he began gouging out the doorway's side until there was a gap big enough to squeeze through. As he did so, he looked up from all fours to see that a gun barrel was positioned at just the right level for John to see a bullet rotate into place. And then instantly, the guard jerked violently as his head was split open by a war glaive. As the guard fell to his knees, the two sides of his head fell away to reveal Adele, who was holding Luke's gun. She called the glaive back and helped John to his feet before leading him back to the chamber. Mid-stride, Adele threw the glaive in such a fashion that it severed the hinges to the chamber door and then returned to her like a boomerang. However, as the door fell, the power returned. John threw the door aside and mid-stride saw in horror through the gap that a lever was being pulled. In the nick of time, John fell to his knees and slid across a tiled floor into the chair, pushing Luke out of the way at the last second. However, the sudden surge from the chair being powered caused the blow in a large electrical shock, sending shrapnel flying everywhere. The warden was killed on impact, while Luke dodged the bullet by the skin of his afro. However, John received a large javelin-like shard of twisted metal through his stomach. Ignoring the pain, he ripped it out of the second floor and started to run, clutching at his wound. Adele tossed Luke's gun to him and beckoned him to follow, and she eventually caught up with John.
"Are you okay?"
She asked. "Just forget it," replied John. "Where are the boys?"
"They're outside holding off the reinforcements. We have to get out of here now."
"We're going to have to wait on Brian and Fang if they haven't made it out yet." Just ahead, the three saw Brian riding Saberfang out of the main door.
Scratch that.
They made it outside, but then they were surrounded. John could barely contain his fury much longer, and with blood dripping from his hands, he started to channel a powerful spell. Arcs of powerful lightning bolts of pure negative energy flew from his hands, and a gust of wind from the backlash threw his cape into the air dramatically. The bolts struck every guard in sight and disintegrated them into ashes, and even the children were shocked by this ability. John rushed to the car and lay down in the back seat, allowing Raziel to take the wheel. Enemy reinforcements in the form of tanks and mobile combat vehicles appeared on the scene, intent on destroying the fleeing car. But Raziel's intellectual wit allowed an easy escape when he lost him in the mine shaft. The car began to sputter as it turned to the last corner into the garage back home, running out of gas at the last second. Vincent grabbed John's legs while Dante and Luke grabbed his arms and carried him inside. "Thanks for getting me out of a death camp, by the way," said Luke. "Turns out most of them guards were members of the KKK. Dante sneered. "It seems that recently when it comes to the persecution of black people, the Ku Klux Klan." Luke laughed as they entered the house. And that was Chapter 2 of Hell's Crusade. Okay, so we've had a rather hectic scene with the prison break. We've learned a little about John and his family, particularly about his unnamed wife, their ancestry, and John's position as a mercenary for hire. Also, we have seen John, Raziel, and Saberfang command supernatural forces, and John's statement of how he has personally raised his children to be self-sufficient subtly hints towards this. Music used in this episode of Hell's Crusade include Rob Zombie's Black Sunshine, Metallica's Escape, and an instrumental remix of Marilyn Manson's The Nobodies, which I used but did not mention in the first episode, as well as the songs Blazing Through the Battlefield and Bombing Mission, which appear on the soundtrack of Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII. This is an amazing game, and the ending nearly had me in tears because of how good everything played out. As far as I know, Crisis Core is available only on the PlayStation Portable, aka the PSP, but it has a good soundtrack that's a mix of orchestral, calm acoustic tunes that are often mixed in with synthetic rock beat that easily provide tension during, tense scenes. This is actually a prequel to Final Fantasy VII, and I would actually recommend playing Final Fantasy VII first. Otherwise, Crisis Core is going to ruin most of the plot twists in 7, as all prequels do. I think I've said enough already, and I don't want to keep babbling on though. Next time on Hell's Crusade, the mysteries surrounding long-kept secrets are finally revealed, and plans are set in motion to take on something far larger than an abnormal suburban family. This is NecroarcanistXIII in association with Bandit 1569, signing off. Stay classy, YouTube.